But let's look at the Democrats. While many of us were mourning and remembering the incredible Charlie Kirk, dozens of Democrats decided not to join Republicans in approving a resolution honouring Charlie Kirk. So the House of Representatives adopted the resolution, which honours Kirk's life and legacy and condemns political violence in a largely bipartisan vote on Friday. But 58 Democrats voted against the resolution. They include Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Maxine Waters. And it's interesting and sadly not surprising, Ilhan Omar has also doubled down on her disgusting comments about Charlie Kirk, where she essentially blamed him for his own assassination. And this is a bit more of what she had to say on CNN.
What I find jarring is that there are so many people willing to excuse the most reprehensible things that he said, that they agree with that they're willing to have monuments for him, that they want to create a day to honor him, and that they want to produce resolutions in the House of Congress honoring his life and legacy. It is one thing to care about his life, because obviously so many people loved him, including his children and wife. But I am not going to sit here and be judged for not wanting to honor any legacy this man has left behind. That should be in the dustbin of history, and we should hopefully move on and forget the hate that he spewed every single day.
Should be in the dustbin of history. Hilary, it's pretty disgusting.
Oh, it is. And you were correct on the list that you named of the 58 Democrats that voted against. There were another 22 that abstained from any vote whatsoever. I think actually, ironically, what they've done, if we talked about the Charlie effect of getting President Trump and Elon Musk back together, what they've really done is they've actually broadcast that they're for political violence and they're for principles that aren't acceptable in a civilized society. That's what they've really done. And as I mentioned, it's the usual suspects. I do think also with Ilhan Omar, I think one thing that she actually should be investigated for is, she came into office virtually broke as a bartender. She makes $155,000 a year, and 5 years later, she's worth approximately $29 million. How does that happen? So that's another issue. And also, her family left Somalia. They were involved in sort of like massacres, and her family is not a fine family, and I think there's a lot more to this. I will say actually that even Phil Mickelson, the PGA Pro champion golfer, he even weighed in on how disgusting her remarks were. So far and wide, they're broadcasting that they're basically pro political violence, which is a ghastly place for them to be boxed in. They've done it themselves. It's an own goal.
There have been some major Maha moves. On Friday, a CDC advisory panel voted to change COVID vaccine guidance towards individual decision-making. So this recommendation encourages patients to speak with their doctors about whether to get an updated shot instead of just recommending it for anyone and everyone 6 months or older. Now, that's a huge change, but also, Hilary, today, Donald Trump and RFK Jr. made a major announcement around autism rates. They announced that the FDA will be warning doctors that taking Tylenol during pregnancy may raise the risk of autism. Listen to this.
Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol during pregnancy, can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good.
Not good. He's very direct, isn't he? But look, for viewers here in Australia, we have to note that Australia's Therapeutic Goods Association has said it's not investigating the link between Tylenol and autism for Australian consumers, and the TGA has no current active safety investigations for paracetamol and autism, or paracetamol and neurodevelopmental disorders more broadly. This is what the regulator said in a statement. But Hilary, back to Donald Trump's announcement. What's your take? I want your assessment of this pretty historic announcement.
Yes, everybody, this is something that I think is far more personal. I just don't put chemicals in my body. I mean, if you have a headache, you're probably not drinking enough water because it's dehydration of the brain. If you have other aches and pains, there's many other ways to address it, whether it's stretching, natural homeopathic ways, massages for aching joints. I mean, there's so many things you can do that are far more natural. And also with regard to our health overall and the vaccines, your health is totally dependent on the strength of your immune system. So you can strengthen your own immune system without taking chemicals, which are totally and utterly unnatural. The most important thing is, we have a certain genetic predisposition to our health. You can't control that. What you can control is 100% of the remaining about 73% of your health. And that's your own personal nutrition, exercise, lack of stress, and lifestyle. I think that's so important. Get enough exercise, eat really well, and try not to put chemicals in your body, really any.
Yeah, it's so important, just going back to basics. That should really be a big focus of some of the messaging. Now, Trump and RFK Jr., of course, they've said it time and time again, they are supportive of vaccines. However, they are looking into certain vaccines. And Donald Trump is just not afraid to call out what others think is just too controversial as he really takes on Big Pharma. Listen to what he had to say here.
Because when you go from 20,000 to 10,000 and then you go to 12, there's something artificial. They're taking something. And by the way, I think I can say that there are certain groups of people that don't take vaccines and don't take any pills that have no autism. That have no autism. Does that tell you something? That's currently, is that a correct statement, by the way?
There are some studies that suggest that, yeah, with the Amish, for example.
The Amish, yeah, virtually. I heard none. See, Bobby wants to be very careful with what he says, and he should, but I'm not so careful with what I say. But you have certain groups. The Amish, as an example, they have essentially no autism.
Listening to Donald Trump, RFK Jr. there, I think hearing them today is a reminder as to why so many people support RFK Jr., so many people support Donald Trump, because they just want more answers and they're happy to see leaders really investigating this.
Yes, I think so. And there certainly is a place. I mean, obviously, pharmaceuticals and vaccines have been responsible for eradicating, some dreadful diseases, whether it's meningitis or polio, measles, etc. But I don't think that the vast majority of the population with this massive increase in vaccine in recent years is necessary. The vaccines that were developed, 20, 30 years ago, obviously have stood humanity well. Life expectancy is longer than ever. So that there's a certain degree that is beneficial. I think it's the excess, Gabriella. That's the big issue now. The point that President Trump made with regard to the Amish, there are also other, groups in society with different beliefs, and they don't take as many vaccines, and they don't eat things out of packets. There's an American expression, actually, always read the label. And I always say, don't read the label, because don't eat things out of packets. Eat fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, and natural things, and you won't have all these issues.
Great advice, Hilary Fordwich. Thank you so much for joining us. Always brilliant to speak with you.
Pleasure, Gabriella. Absolutely.